purely by chance. I wouldn't say it was by design or whatever, but we seem to have come up with a style of music that, you know, gave people a lot of room to think. It was quite interactive. You put something into our music, i.e. put your attention into it, and you would get something out.
Well, I have to say I'm a huge fan of the Cocteau twins. And I think it's because of two things. First of all, Robin Guthrie's guitar sound, which until I'd heard that, I don't think I'd heard anything like it before. That sort of shimmering guitar sound that, you know, is just obviously so unique to the Cocteau twins. And then obviously Elizabeth's voice, which is pretty unique as well.
Of course, Liz, you know, is I think most probably one of my favourite singers of all time, you know, and there's something just so otherworldly about her that you can't quite put your finger on, and I don't think she can quite put a finger on, and that's what makes it really brilliant. Yeah, I think because she doesn't actually realise how brilliant she really is.
I never saw myself as wanting to be a musician, but when I first heard her music, it just did something to me inside me. It was like a gut thing more than a head thing, and it was almost like falling in love. You know, when you meet someone, you get like a rush, and you really feel this kind of like engagement with something. That's what it was like, really.
Just incredibly beautiful, and it, you know, it didn't sound like anything I think I'd ever really heard before. You know? And I think it took a few listens to really kind of figure out what was going on, you know, and get your head around the fact that they were vocals, but that there weren't actually any kind of words you could really recognise. You know, you might recognise the opera, but yeah, so I guess I was pretty blown away.
The first time I ever heard the Cocteau twins, I think there was a club in Chicago called Medusas, which was sort of an all-age club, which was really influential to a lot of Chicago music in the 90s because Ministry would play there, and that's where I first heard New Order and stuff like that. And I remember just thinking, like, that's so strange, you know? Like, it didn't sound like any music that I'd ever heard.
I mean, I really fell in love with the sound, you know, which kind of like went on. I mean, it was as much Lizzie's voice as Robin's production. The two were just kind of like seamless. And I was always really intrigued as to like they made it sound so effortless. That's what attracted me the most. It was kind of the first time I'd heard this, you know, I mean, it's described in various ways. I mean, it's ethereal and all the other adjectives, but it was really sensuous. It kind of drew you in and was effortless, and you just found yourself just immersed in this sound. And I played the Cocteaus like relentlessly. I mean, they were, you know, when you get to a period and you just play the same albums over and over again. I mean, I could probably play most of Treasure, and I've never sat down and learned it, but I know it so well. In fact, that was the album I played as I was getting ready for my wedding. I played to myself as I was getting dressed on my wedding day. Because it's it's the most romantic sound I'd ever heard.
My band was a sort of curious beginning, really, because we were very sort of young. Myself and Will Heggie, the first bass player, we'd sort of known each other since we were at school and knew Liz. So when we made Garlands, I mean, I was like 19 and Liz was 17, so we were kind of young. We were kind of really super naive, you know. Well, we decided we'd make a demo tape and we'd release a record. And we had to play the songs twice, in fact, because we couldn't copy the cassette. And naively jumped on an overnight bus to London and took one to 40D, handed it in, and took one to the BBC and handed it into John Peel's office, and then just went back to Scotland and waited for the response, which we knew would come. Because we thought we were great, and we would just chosen that label, and they were the lucky ones. And it was years, absolutely years, before I realised that that's not how it works. It was really kind of blind, youthful, naive stupidity and total self-belief that what we were doing was just great and different and exciting and vibrant.
Well, of course, Robin Guthrie was in town in London to see the birthday party played. They'd just come down as fans to see the birthday party played, and they had a cassette which they stuffed into my hands, or Robin stuffed into my hand, literally just sort of passing him. And that's the first time I ever heard the Cocteau Twins, and the extraordinary thing was that you could barely hear Liz on there. I mean, yes, there's this thin reverb voice behind all of these guitars, some sort of natural tape compression of a thing live to tape was going on. But you couldn't hear, but I really liked it, and I invited them to come down to London to record a couple of songs. And so I'd never met them until they came, they stayed at my flat, we went to the studio, they set up, and they started playing, and Liz started singing, and it was quite a surprise. I mean, you know, just talk about icing on the cake. I mean, I was interested in them for, you know, the energy and the melodic aspects of the music, but I had no idea that this voice was even there. So, yeah, I say icing on the cake.